Greetings, Father Joe here, your friendly neighborhood pastor, coming to you from St. Patrick's Church in lovely Highland Mills, New York. Today is the 23rd Sunday in Ordinary Time. We have Isaiah telling the people that the Lord is going to strengthen their hearts. He's going to remove their fear. In the Gospel, we have Jesus opening the ears and the mouth of a man born deaf. I'm going to talk about Jesus healing blind people as well. So when we think of Jesus healing people, we oftentimes think of the physical healing or the objective. All right. Jesus puts his fingers in the guy's ears, and then spitting touches his tongue. Yuck. That is objective. It's physical. That's what Jesus does. But here's the thing. That's not enough. We need to be healed on many different levels. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about now comes from an analogy. Dr. Oliver Sacks, in his book, An Anthropologist on Mars, speaks about a patient named Virgil who was born with sight, but at about age 3 lost his sight. And then at 40-something, he had an operation and he regained sight. So that would be similar to Jesus saying to the deaf man, be opened, and opening his ears and his mouth. But here's the deal. When you gain your hearing or your sight, you also lose things. There has to be a change, not only on the outside, but on the inside. And so Dr. Sacks, when he is speaking about Virgil, he says that when they removed the bandages, Virgil's fiance said, oh, and then he could see. But speaking to Virgil and the doctor, he couldn't see yet. He couldn't recognize anything. They took the bandages off, and Virgil didn't say anything because he couldn't see anything. He could see colors, but not, he couldn't recognize things. And so the doctor said, can you see, or tell us what you see? And Virgil says, and then I could then I could see the doctor. But he still couldn't really see the doctor. He couldn't recognize faces. Because he had been sighted for a while, he could recognize capital letters on an eye chart, but he couldn't recognize words or people's faces. That had to be done, if you will, kind of on a mental or a neurological level. And so if you think about this in terms of God's healing us or opening our eyes spiritually, or our hearts, we have to learn, we have to cooperate. I love Ezekiel chapter 36. Ezekiel says, I will take you away from among the nations and gather you from the lands. I will bring you back to your own soil. So that's something that God is going to do. But then in verse 25, he says, I will sprinkle clean water over you to make you clean from your impurities, and from your idols I will cleanse you. But again, that's not enough. And then in verse 26, he says, I will give you a new heart and a new spirit. I will put within you. I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. So a heart of stone goes to a heart of flesh. There has to be this deeper level of healing. And in the case of Virgil, it was his mind or mental or neurological changes. But then there's another level of healing. And I would say that was our will. Virgil had to choose to be healed. And apparently this is, Dr. Sachs says that oftentimes when people regain their sight, and I would say this is probably true with hearing as well, it so complicates their life, or it so throws them off, that they need to continue to choose this. In Virgil's case, when he would get exhausted, he would just close his eyes. When it got to be too much, he would just function as a blind person again. I noticed this when I moved out of the city, 6 years ago. I moved up here to the country, and it's so pleasant, and it's so quiet, and it's so peaceful. And the first time I went back into the city, it was loud and it was crowded, and I thought, oh my gosh, I just want peace. And so for a person who is deaf, imagine just the sounds crashing in on you. Or again, for Virgil, when he regained his sight, bright light was too much for him. I mean, he liked keeping the light subdued, and he really had to work at it. So when God heals us, we need to choose to cooperate with him. By the way, that's what the church means when it says that we merit salvation. It doesn't mean that we earn salvation, because you can't do that. But if God heals us, and if he gives us salvation, our cooperation, or our choosing that is what the church means when it says merit, that we must merit heaven. Now, another thing, and this is so important, there needs to be a reorientation. We need to change the way we think, the way we function, the way we look at the world. In the case of Virgil, Dr. Sachs says that a deaf person organizes things sequentially, time-wise. It takes so long to move to this or to that. But when a person regains their sight, their brain actually has to change, and they need to reorient to a visual spatial mode. And one of the people that he quoted said that you need to die to the blind person and then start living this new sighted life. So it's a wonderful analogy for the Christian life. We need to die to the sinner, or die to the old person. We need to reorient. I guess you could say it's from me-centered to Christ-centered, or from being selfish to being charitable. By the way, this was very evident in the way people reacted to the pandemic. Some people said, well, I've got to wear a mask to keep me safe. Other people said, I wear a mask to keep other people safe. I want to do things so that I can live, or I want to do things so that other people can live. Just look at any married couple or any new parents. There has to be a reorientation. God gives us the grace to do this, but we need to choose it. We need to cooperate. We need to change the way we see things and the way we think of things. So when Jesus heals this deaf man, the deaf man needs to change his life. And then there's just this other fascinating part. This is in Dr. Sachs's book, Anthropologist on Mars. Virgil got these operations, and so we could start to see on his wedding day, his family, who did not live near him, was against the operation, and they didn't believe that he could see. And this so stressed Virgil out that on the day of his wedding, when his family showed up, he couldn't see, or he could barely see. And his family treated him like he was blind. They would lead him around, they would hand him things, and he couldn't see. And at the end of the day, his family left. And shortly after the family left, his sight came back. Not right away, but it gradually increased so that he could see. And And so again, this happens in our lives as Christians. In baptism, we are given this new life. Or in confession, when we go to confession and God forgives us our sins and he gives us the grace of confession to change and to be healed. Sometimes if we go back to other people, they can short circuit this. Now, by the way, later on, Virgil could see around his family, but it took a while. And so maybe, if we are changing our life, we may need to avoid certain people. In AA, they say persons, places, and things. That would be for where someone drank. With sin, if I'm hanging around with someone who does not accept the fact that Jesus has healed me or does not accept the fact that I'm a Christian, they can sabotage this new life. I guess after confession, again, just on a personal level, we can choose to fall back into an old or a more comfortable habit or a different way of life. We may choose to hang out with people because it's comfortable, but it may stop the transformation that Jesus is doing in our life. So again, Jesus asks us if we want to be healed, then he heals us. But then it's kind of like the ball is in our court. We have to ask God for more grace so that we can be spiritually healed, so that we can have this new heart, so that we can choose or we can cooperate or we can merit. We also have to reorient the way we think from me-centered or society-centered to Jesus-centered and God-centered and other people-centered. And the last thing here, when we say that I have to change the way I'm around other people, if we have been baptized, if we've gone to confession, if we are receiving this grace from God, we need to make sure that we are not like Virgil's family, who was against the change and then did not believe in the change and so treated the person the same way. If you know someone who has apologized or they've gone to confession or they've gotten baptized or they are trying to change their life, if we treat the person as if they haven't changed, we can stop that. And so we don't want to do that. We want to encourage the person to live this new life, to be brought out of sin and into grace. So that's something to think about today. God bless you.